Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm playing Drawback chess, where each player gets a random drawback, like Lame Duck, where you can't move your king, or True Gentleman, where you can never capture a queen. My goal is to win 5 games. Let's get started with game number 1. Alright, game number 1, we get the black pieces. Our drawback is True Gentleman, can't capture queens. Hey, that's one of the ones that we have in our example. That's so awesome. I don't think we've ever had that one come up during a real game. Alright, we get e4. The only thing is we can't capture queens, so as long as we don't get into like a deep endgame, I think we should be okay. Ooh, f4 is super confrontational. We'll play d5. And queen to h5. Okay, our opponent's drawback must be something absolutely horrendous to be playing like this. If I play knight to f6, will we get a queen sacrifice? That's my question, and I would love to have that answer. Let's develop and hit the queen. Oh wait, actually that would be a problem. Ooh, wait. Oh, okay, we get queen back to h3, and I can't capture this queen. So I'm gonna very quickly take on e4 and pretend like I didn't see it, because the last thing I need is for my opponent to figure out that I cannot capture their queen. Because what will happen then is my opponent will play here, and then I will have no way to stop my opponent from just steamrolling my position. I'm gonna keep very quickly taking pieces. Ah, and my opponent blocks it. Okay, so my opponent now has the opportunity to maybe believe. Oh, wait, what? We won? Oh, I was going to say our opponent might have the opportunity to believe that we just didn't see it all those moves in a row, but let's go ahead and pop up the info board. All right, you won. Great. Your opponent lost due to their drawback. Your opponent's drawback was Homeland Security. If your opponent moves into your 16 starting squares, you lose. So basically, my opponent couldn't allow me to play into the first 2 ranks, which I did by capturing that c2 pawn. Sweet. With that, we win game number 1. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 2. All right, game number 2, we get the black pieces again, and probably the same opponent. I don't remember, to be honest, but our drawback is outflanked. Except for capturing kings, you can't capture on the rim. So rim meaning anything on the edge of the board, we are not allowed to capture on those squares. So I guess now we're definitely going to have to try to play in the center and probably win very quickly. Now, one thing that you guys mentioned to me is that drawbacks are assigned based off the strength of your opponent. So you saw that my drawback in the last game was easier than my opponent's drawback, which tells me that this opponent must be higher rated than I am. And I'm rated about 1560 in drawback chess. So I'm assuming my opponent got another terrible drawback. We get knight to g5. Let's go ahead and play. Let's just take the pawn in the center. If we get queen here, I can just play g6 and we should be totally fine. Okay, we do get queen to h5. Our opponent's trying to basically checkmate us as quickly as possible. And obviously we're not going to allow it. Queen back to f3 allows me to just take, so free queen. Our opponent must have an absolutely terrible drawback to be diving in with the queen like this every single game. And the funny thing I just realized actually was that playing g6 was a total non-threat. If our opponent had left the queen on h5, I wouldn't have been able to capture anyways, but it was a little bit of a bluff, an unintentional bluff, and our opponent fell right into it. Okay, our opponent has now run down half their time. I'm not really sure what they're thinking about, but they may just be rage quitting on me as well. Okay, opponent now down to their last 15 seconds. Not a very classy way to go, but we'll assume that something outrageous happened. All right, sweet. With that, we win game number 2. Let's go ahead and pop up the info board. Your opponent ran out of time. Your opponent's drawback was Barbarian Rage. If you captured on your last move, you must capture if able. Yeah, that's a pretty tough drawback because that would basically lead to a sequence of taking until you lose a piece at the very end. And you'll notice that my opponent's drawback was once again harder than mine, probably because my opponent is rated higher than I am. Anyways, with that, we win game number 2. Let's go to move on to game number 3. All right, game number 3, we get the white pieces. D4 is a no-brainer, but our drawback is my kingdom for a horse. If your opponent captures a knight, you lose. Ooh, yeah, that is a tough cracker to break. That's not a great one. Okay, we get D6. I guess I'll develop my bishops first and then play like E3, bishop D3. And at all costs, I need to basically defend my knights. They're as important, if not more important than my king is now. So we'll play E3. I basically have 3 kings on the board. On the bright side, they can jump away relatively quickly, but to where, really? That's the problem, because they can jump away, but if they jump away into the opponent's position, they're equally lost. So let's play bishop to D3. We'll basically play a London, but not move our knights. Okay, we get knight to f6, we'll play c3. There's no clear way to get to this knight on b1. Our king isn't in any particular danger at the moment. And same thing on this side, there's no clear way to get to this knight either. We get knight to e7. Let's play h4. Let's start a sort of attack. I need to get these rooks out, but I really don't want to move my knights. So let's do a4 on the other side of the board. We get bishop d7 targeting this pawn. Normally, there's a knight on f3 here blocking that attack. Right now, there's a cowering knight in the corner. So we're going to play f3 to block it instead. Maybe play e4 to bolster our center a little bit. And with any luck, either of these two moves will help us get a attack going wherever our opponent castles. Let's play queen to e2. We get long castles. Bishop to a6 is always an interesting idea. And h6 is what we are met with. I'm not totally sure what the idea of this is. g5 isn't possible because the rook is pinned. So it might just be a waiting move. Let's try e4, grab a little more center space. I mean, I'm sure our opponent has noticed that we haven't moved our knights, and maybe I've made it a little too obvious that we can't move our knights anywhere, but I'm kind of hoping that we'll get like long castle, and then I can play like knight e2, knight f1, and then just focus on a crazy queenside attack, while my three most important pieces just sit on the king side. Okay, we get d5, I'm going to close up the center with e5. Opponent really only has two moves, well actually three. Knight to h5 is a possibility, knight to h7, and knight to g8 are all possibilities. Knight to h5 is a little bit sketchy because bishop h2 or even just bishop d2. Knight to e4. Free knight for me. Thank you very much. That makes me wonder what our opponent's drawback is. Let's go ahead and take back once more. We're now hitting the rook. Long castle is tempting, but it would walk into mate, and we get knight to d5, blocking all of those attacks. Okay, we're going to play bishop back to d2. The problem with winning that knight is that we are up a piece, but we still can't play with two of our pieces, so you could think that we're still down two pieces in a sense. We get bishop to e7. Let's defend that with g3. And like I said, I'm not going to touch this knight, so I'm just going to do a little rook lift. Oh, wait. Your opponent revealed their drawback, lethal attraction. You can't make moves that place the moving piece farther away from your opponent's king than it started. Oh, interesting. Okay, so moral dilemma. Do I reveal my drawback? Because I would argue that my drawback is worse than my opponent's drawback, but that could be biased because I've been sitting here for like 15 moves dealing with it. I'll play fair and reveal my drawback as well. So now we've both revealed our drawbacks. Our opponent knows that if I lose my knights, I lose the game. And I know that my opponent can't make any moves that don't move closer to my king. So I'm going to play c4 to win the knight. Opponent's best bet here is probably just c6, because technically that moves the pawn closer to my king, but instead my opponent plays f5. So I'm going to play en passant, and it seems that my opponent has to take with one of these pieces, lose the knight on d5, potentially lose the rook on a8. Okay, bishop takes back, I'll take on d5, and my opponent just has to find a way to take one of these two knights, and it's game over for me. So I have to not allow that to happen. So queen takes back. Let's go ahead and take the queen. Then we get pawn takes. I'll play rook to a3, drops the pawn on d4, which isn't great. Okay, I'll play bishop e3 first, and then I want to play like rook to a3, maybe have a little rook lift, same thing on the other side, and get my pieces developed. Again, I still can't really move these knights, so those guys are not in play. We get rook to e8. We'll play king d2, still seems to defend everybody. Oh, wait a minute. Bishop sack and then rook to f1 is, well, is that losing? Because my opponent can't take this knight because it's further away from the king, and I don't know if my opponent would be able to take this knight. We get pawn to c5. Let's go ahead and take. And now, rook to b3. I want to play check, and I want to cause my opponent some problems. I'm down to 40 seconds, and truth be told, it's seeming likely that I'm going to win this by time. Let's play bishop to f4, get the bishop out of the way. Okay, bishop to e5 offers a trade, but then there's still rook to f1, which is quite scary. So, knight to a3 first. I'm happy to lose this pawn because now there's no more fork on those two knights. Okay, rook forward, knight to h3. I'm basically just dealing with rooks now. So as long as my knights aren't attacked on a file or a rank, I think I'm okay. Okay, rook to e4 looks for rook to e3. Let's play knight to b5, knight c4. I don't know what the right approach is here. I just need to get this fork out of my hair, basically. I'm down to 22 seconds as well, but I do get 2 seconds back for every move that I make. Okay, opponent is now equal on time. King to c6, sure, I'll just develop, hitting some pawns. I can't waste too much time making any calculations. Oh, king d5 is kind of an issue. Knight a5, leap out of the way, hope for the best. Check, let's just move back. 10 seconds left for our opponent. Rook to e3, sure, we'll trade. And if the pawn takes, then we have check, loses the rook with the pre-move, and now it should be basically impossible for our opponent to take one of our knights, because this knight should always be able to outrun the king. Okay, pawn to e2, play here, I'm happy to sack the rook. I mean, I'll still be up a piece. Pawn to c4, I'll take. King takes, I take back, and with that, we win game number 3. Let's go ahead and pop up the info board. All right, you won, you took your opponent's king. Your opponent's drawback was lethal attraction. Oh wait, why am I reading it? We already knew what it was. Anyways, the game ranks these as about equal level drawbacks, which I guess is fair. We made a right call by actually revealing our drawback so we could have an even Steven game. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 4. All right, game number 4, our drawback is Expedition. On move 15, you must move to E1. You've got to be kidding me. And it has to be on move 15? Or is it by move 15? That makes a huge difference, but I'm going to play... how do I play this to actually make this possible? Let's just play D5, I guess. D5, let's just play Scandi, as aggressive as we can possibly play, and somehow we need to make our way to E1. Okay, E5 tries to close up the center. We have to force it open, or else there's no way we're getting to that square. We get pawn to C4. Let's go ahead and take. Anything that opens up the position is favorable in my eyes. B3, interesting. Let's try... Well, I was going to say try queen to D5, but then bishop B2 simply defends. But then there is still check, and then I can even sack the queen. But then our opponent would block. Ugh. It's not so clear, but we're going to give it a try anyways. We're going to play queen D5. I need to brute force my way into that square somehow. We have 11 turns left. Okay, bishop takes. We're going to take with check. Hit the rook at the same time. I'm going to make the assumption that our opponent is rated much lower than we are. And the reason I'm making that assumption is because to have a drawback as punishing as you must move to E1 on move 15, there has to be a huge rating discrepancy. Okay, knight to C3 actually traps our queen quite effectively. If I take this bishop, our opponent might not even take back. And now I'm dealing with the issue of how do I get back to E1, since that was my goal in the first place. Let's try bishop here, double attacking the knight on B1. If I can free the queen, maybe I can dive to E1, even if I have to sacrifice the queen myself. We have 7 turns to make our way to E1. Queen to H5 is check, we'll block with a pawn, defend the bishop. Queen back to F3 allows me to take back with the queen, I'm hitting the bishop, maybe I can make my way to E1 in the nick of time. The most punishing way our opponent could play is to just castle, because then the rook defends E1, defends the bishop, but we get bishop to A4 instead. Let's try bishop back to F5. We're now threatening to capture and give check, and we have to be on E1 in 4 turns. This is going to be a problem, I can tell. So we have 3 turns before we need to be on this square. Well, with any luck, our opponent might just move the bishop and allow us to achieve our objective by themselves. Let's see. Let's play E5. Well, no, E5 doesn't punish anything. Here's what we'll do. We're going to play... Oh, it hurts my soul, but we're going to play bishop to E4. And the reason we're playing bishop to E4 is because we need to match our opponent's threat, which is basically bishop to A3, hitting the queen, and probably winning it. So, and actually... definitely winning it because it'll be trapped. We get queen takes. In 2 turns, we need to trigger this bishop moving out of the way so we can move to E1. So let's see. If I move here, then on the next turn, our opponent could play here and maybe we can make our way to E1. So let's give that a try. Knight to D7. Our opponent is down to a minute as well. Nice, we do get bishop to A3. Must move to E1 in 1 turn. Wait, does that mean now? Oh, this is so confusing. Oh, because we're on move 14. Hold on, let's play F5. Please don't take my queen. Please don't take my queen. Move your queen out of the way. My queen is trapped. My queen has nowhere to go. So if you just move your queen out of the way, instead of a fair... Nice! Queen to C4. We can move our queen to E1. I've never been so happy to lose my queen. Wow. That actually worked out. We did trigger our opponent's move bishop to A3 at the perfect time. So now there's no way we can lose due to our drawback. Let's... Well, if I castle out of the way, there's even a bishop sack here. And that's that's pretty terrifying. I'm so relieved that that worked out. Now I just need to win this somehow, which is not a great place to be. Let's try B5 and at least pick up a piece. Okay, queen to C5. Let's go ahead and take our piece. This is defended 3 different times, so there's not actually enough pieces to sacrifice and get mate. Opponent has 30 seconds left. Queen to A5. Let's trade off the pawn, and then we can probably just start developing. That is not how the knight moves. Terrible arrows, but we can probably start developing, like knight to F6. Maybe rook to D8, and we're basically just hanging on for dear life until I guess our opponent's drawback kicks in at some point. I'm starting to feel like our opponent doesn't even have a drawback. It feels like we've set everything up so perfectly. Okay, but our opponent does have less than 20 seconds on the clock. Queen to C7, I'm just going to play defensive. By all means, take all of my pawns, leave me with nothing, but run out of time, please. Okay, bishop takes, I take. Free bishop. Queen takes the free pawn. Let us move the king out of the way so I can connect the rooks. And then do like a pseudo castle sort of thing. 1 second. Nice, and we win on time. With that, we win game number 4. Let's go ahead and pop up the info board. You won, your opponent ran out of time. And as I mentioned, our opponent's drawback was much easier than ours. Your opponent's drawback was Dr. Octopus. You can only capture non-king pieces 8 times. So basically, you can only capture half of my army, which is pretty interesting. Anyways, with that, we win game number 4. Even though our drawback was significantly more difficult than our opponents, we did manage to finesse the victory. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 5. All right, game number 5, we get the black pieces. Our drawback is active volcano. You can't move onto or orthogonally adjacent to D5. Now, I'm not totally sure if that means this way or this way, but I'm assuming it'll highlight the squares for us and make our lives a little bit easier. Aha, so it did mean this way, like a plus. I'll keep that in mind for the future. Orthogonally means like a plus. All right, you can't move onto or adjacent. So I basically can't touch any of these squares. Now, lucky for me, I played the King's Indian for a long time, so we'll just resort to that, basically, castle out of the way, and then play like a very silly variation where instead of playing D6, we play like C6 or something. Like a perk modern where you forget to play D6. I guess that's fine. Okay, we get C4, we'll play C6. I mean, we have no chance, basically, at controlling the center whatsoever. Even if we try to go at it from an angle, we can never reinforce in the center, so it's not even worth it. Let's just play, we're gonna end up playing like beginner chess, basically, where you just start throwing stuff at your opponent, and you hope that something sticks. We get castles, we'll play b5. Obviously, our opponent does not have the same drawback we do. There's a pawn right there, but I'm hoping that their drawback is at least equally painful. Okay, queen to b3. Problem is, how do I unstick all of these pieces? Let's start by taking and then play a5. The bishop can develop through a6, the knight can do the same and just return to c7, maybe knight to e6 at some point. And we start to kind of untangle all of our pieces. Rook to e1. Let's start with knight to a6 so I can get that piece out of the way. And then I'll probably just route the bishop to a6, leave it there staring down that diagonal. Okay, a3 will move the knight back. And the interesting thing is we have decent control over this square, but it doesn't actually matter. If our opponent ever pushes d5, I can't actually do anything about it. So I probably should not let my opponent storm into the center. The only way to do that is to distract them on a flank, which will be a pretty hard task, to be honest. We get queen to a2. Let's play rook to b8. I guess activate the rook. And eventually, I assume my opponent will get this sort of pawn structure that is like deep into our position and that I really won't be able to do anything about. So I'm just gonna have to play like e6, knight back, leap this knight out of the way, and just forfeit my center to my opponent, basically. Okay, our opponent's down to a minute 30 now. And I think this is a valid part of drawback chess is you have to read your drawback, you have to understand the ramifications, and you have to come up with a at least half decent plan to play based off of it within the 3 minutes that you are allotted. So let's play e6. And I feel like that's a valid part of having to play drawback chess. If you can't come up with a plan quickly enough, then you simply won't win the game. You won't survive. Bishop d6 right away. Our opponent roots their bishop into a square that I can never kick them off of. So that's going to be quite a pain. Not to mention here, just e5, knight to h5, g4. Actually, e5 allows knight to f4, so maybe it wouldn't trap our knight quite so quickly. We get knight to a4. Again, knight c5 is not something I can do anything about. How about this? I'm going to play knight to b5 and offer my opponent my exchange, basically, to uproot this bishop and give myself some flexibility in my own position. I'm literally negotiating to get back squares in my own position. Because the way I see this, it's one thing to have a bunch of pawns here and I can never break through that wall. And it's another thing to have a bishop that not only controls that square, but even further into my position. We get knight to c5, threatens the bishop, which really has no future outside of getting traded off. So I'm going to play queen to a7 and allow that trade. Okay, we get a4 booting the knight. Really no choice but knight to c7, so we'll just play it. And actually now if we get this trade, taking back with the knight is interesting because of knight to b4. Okay, e5 right in your face. I guess knight to h5. If g4, there's still knight to f4. Maybe we can trade it off. But if we don't get that, maybe bishop to f8, drop the knight back will be necessary. Okay, b3, let us... Oh, actually, we're hanging this as well, which our opponent didn't seem to notice. So let's play knight to a8. We'll reroute the knight to b6. The queen defends d7 once more. Queen to d2. Covers f4, so g4 is a legitimate threat. Bishop to f8. If g4, we drop the knight back. And we are not thriving, but we are at least surviving for the meantime. Okay, our opponent has under 30 seconds now to capitalize on our weaknesses. We'll see if our opponent thinks this is a legitimate threat. Removing the guard to take on b3, which obviously is actually impossible because I can't move to those squares. Okay, our opponent does. Our opponent thinks that's an actual threat on the table. Let's play rook to b4, kind of lean into the idea that maybe we're actually creating an attack. while our opponent's time, nice, crawls under 20, and we get a retreating move. I'm going to go ahead and trade off the bishop and double up my queen with my rook. Nice, we're actually getting somewhere now. We're creating some positional advantages. Maybe knight to b4 if we drop drop the rook back. Could be interesting. Hopefully our opponent isn't suspect of the fact that we didn't play knight to d5, which is a very natural move there. Centralizes the knight, it's an outpost, and it threatens b4 if that's really of such interest. Okay, queen goes back. I'll take on b3. I mean, I drop a5, but I open up the position so much that I think it's worth it, considering my opponent has less than 10 seconds. Well, not anymore, but a moment ago did. Okay, we'll put this knight on the outpost. We're doing quite well for ourselves. Queen to b2. Our opponent is low on time as well. So maybe if we work our way into the position, we can create some sort of weaknesses. Nice, we've done what we're going to do on the queen side. Let's work on the flank now. I mean, I can never work in the center, so I can't give myself too much credit for working on either flank, since it's really our only option. Ooh, knight back, take again. Nice, we'll play... Ooh, knight to f5 is a little bit premature. We'll play bishop e7 first. King to h2. I need to have a way to bring my queen over before I open up the position too much. Actually... no, I can play it anyways, because if my opponent takes, there's ideas of like queen to f1. Okay, king moves out of the way. King g7. Knight to f3. We'll play queen to a8 with the idea of rerouting the queen. Although our opponent also has, ooh, I was going to say rook to h1, but we get rook d2 instead. So queen h8 is a no-brainer now. Maybe check. Brings the queen into the game. Okay, we do get that trade. I'm going to take with this pawn, because it doesn't make any sense for me to open up my own king side. And we do get rook back. Queen to h5, threaten check. 5 seconds for the opponent. So we do have them on their toes. This drops the knight as well. Rook to g1. Let's develop the bishop, put some pressure on f2. Nice, drops the rook. And we are very strategically trying to make our opponent lose time here. So it's hanging the queen, but it's looking for this fork. And now we are in a completely winning endgame. Nice, king to g2, sure. I mean, pretty much anything here is winning. Just drop the bishop back. There's really no need for me to even play quickly, and we win game number 5. Very nice. Let's go ahead and pop up the info board, and we win. Your opponent's drawback was hipster. Can't move the same type. Oh, can't move the same piece type as your opponent's last move. That's really interesting, because that means that like a bishop to bishop recapture or a knight to knight recapture, or especially a pawn to pawn recapture, which is very, very common, can't occur. It's not allowed for my opponent. That's why we won that g4 pawn, because we moved a pawn to capture a pawn, which means our opponent can't move a pawn. Wrap your head around that. Anyways, with that, we do win all 5 games. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down below what you guys think of Drawback Chess, or if there are any other variants that I should play, and I will see you guys in the next one.